Next element we're going to take a look at is the scroll. It can have many different shapes. For example, here's a C scroll, shaped sort of like the letter C. Here's something like an S scroll, or similar to letter S. And there are many different variations. Okay, and many different shapes, but the basic idea is the same. It's a piece of wood. It has roughly square or rectangular cross section, and it is curved to form a nice looking pattern. In its simplest form, it's a basic flat piece cut out into this shape, and some advanced forms feature details like a decorative trim border with the scroll going in and ending with a little ball here. So it just spirals and ends with a ball. Okay, some more advanced examples include some very complicated carvings and ornaments. Okay, and sometimes it tapers a lot, starts fat and ends up skinny. But the basic principles to create them are the same. So let's start with something like this. Let's see how we would make a simple scroll without any decorations at all. Alright, and to do this you would probably just trace it. Just trace it with a line. And use an extrude modifier or something similar. And you need to create only one half of this, as the other half can be made by mirroring this first half. And you can use the Bezier handles to easily adjust the shape. So spline modeling is really helpful in stuff like this. You can easily trace the outline if you have a nice reference photo. And try to keep the shape smooth and flowing. Otherwise it's gonna look wrong. Okay, it's best to change these smooth areas to Bezier. And this way you will not get any creases there or any sharp transitions. Right, so once you have one half ready, you can easily mirror it, make a copy, and move to the other side. And just attach them together and well, these vertices, so there are no gaps between the two lines, otherwise it's not gonna extrude correctly. Okay, and then just using the bevel modifier, I would first extrude it to give it some thickness, and then extrude it a little bit more to bevel the edge slightly. Okay, and finally I would give it symmetry to make the beveled edge appear on both sides. Right, so something like that. Okay, so that's the most basic example. So quite often these scrolls feature these decorative borders or outlines, and this is a bit more tricky to create. If you start with something like this, you could try edit poly, insert this polygon, okay, let's make sure you have everything correctly here. Since there's a sharp corner, it doesn't inset correctly. So you have to fix some stuff manually. Right, and you can just extrude it inwards. And you have something similar to that decorative trim or border. All that's left is chamfering the edges. I should probably have increased the interpolation steps for the original line, since it's a bit faceted over here, but I just want to demonstrate the principles of how to create something like this. Okay, so you have this decorative border here, and it works fine if it doesn't have these scrolls that go inside the shape, and if you only have a border, like for example in this photo, you only have border, no details inside. So that's something like this. However, if you do have additional details, like in this example, it becomes a bit more tricky. I'm just going to quickly change my reference image, move that to the side, and I'm going to show you how I would approach something like this. So for this first example, we used smooth lines with Bezier corners and stuff like that to get the smoothness in the curves, but now we're gonna make a rough outline and use Turbo Smooth later on to achieve similar effect. So I'm just gonna approximate the shape. But not follow it exactly. And you have to take into account the distortion. Since this is a rotated view, not a straight on shot, so take that into account. And try to recreate the shape. Let's make it a bit smoother. Okay. Let's try to rotate it and see how it looks. Maybe let's flatten this part a bit. All right. And now when we have this rough shape prepared, we can convert it to editable poly. First, check all the vertices are set to corner. Otherwise, it can cause some problems. For example, if this one is set to Bezier or something, and you convert to editable poly, you can see there are many additional vertices that we don't need. So make sure all the vertices are set to corner. And when you convert to editable poly, it has vertices only on those spots where the points used to be. Okay. So the first step would be to inset the resulting polygon a bit from the edge like this. Alright. You can press the F2 button to switch between red faces and red borders around selected faces, so it's easier to see this way. Okay, and now we can add some detail to finish these decorative scrolls. So for example, let's turn it inwards like this. Right, let's try to keep the distance equal all around. And just try to roughly approximate the shape. Okay, so let's connect some of the vertices. So like this. Make a nice mesh. and adjust the final shape manually. And this is going to become our decorative scroll. Okay, I think that might be good. And the only thing we need to fix is this part here. I'm gonna add a cut right here, and we're gonna get rid of this triangle. Okay, that's better. Let's try to smooth it out a bit. Make sure everything is nice and welded. And keep connecting the vertices to create a nice grid. So now you have something similar to a flat version of this object. At least on top, we still need to create the bottom part. Okay, so for the bottom part, it's gonna be a bit different, but the basic idea is the same. You use the cut tool. To recreate the scroll. I don't do it all in one single cut, because that can cause some problems with weird overlapping polygons. So sometimes I stop and end my cut line on the place where I just stopped. So for example, I don't go all the way around, but I just stop here and cut over to the edge. And this can help avoiding some problems. And the idea is to make this mesh composed only from rectangles or four-sided polys, and sometimes it's not possible, so some triangles are okay. Sometimes you have some pentagons, and don't worry about it too much. since this area is not going to be deformed or animated, it's not that essential to have all quads or all four-sided polys. But whenever possible, try to stick to that number of sides. So the exact way on how to create this mesh is not fixed in any way. You can improvise, just as long as the final result is something like this. Okay. Let's connect some of these loose vertices. And we need to add some cuts here to create this sharp corner. And now just smooth the whole thing manually. Okay. Close enough. And we can check how it looks with some Turbo Smooth on. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these extruded details and actually extrude them outwards. Okay. I'm gonna add edit poly just so it's reversible. and extrude them outwards. First just a little bit. And then a bit more. Okay, and maybe let's inset it just a little bit as well. And this will make sure they just stay quite sharp. Okay, let's test it. Turbo Smooth. Smooth it a bit more. And as you can see, we're pretty close. Maybe some details are needed here. Alright, so I'm gonna add a cut. Something very simple like this. Let's see how that looks better. And you can go over your model and okay. And adjust the overall shape a bit. Just to make sure everything is nice and round. And make sure the curves are smooth. And look good. Okay. So that's close enough. I think you can keep on tweaking the shape quite a bit more if you wish. But you get the basic idea. Alright, and once you're happy with this shape, you can go ahead and select the outline or the border and Shift plus move it inwards to extrude. Okay, first what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grow my selection and move this a bit inwards, okay, like that. And then I'm going to select the border and extrude it more. All right. Let's add symmetry. Move it out. Okay. And the final detail we need to add is we need to go above the symmetry, add edit poly, and just select this edge ring, control click here on the polygons to convert your selection. and we want to extrude this thing inwards. Make sure you set it to local normals so the extrusion goes correctly. Okay, like that. Accept and inset just a little bit. And there's your scroll. So the process is a bit complicated, but the end result is a single object with correct geometry. And it looks quite good. So there is one more way you can do this. You can start with the basic shape. I'm just gonna quickly demonstrate to you. Okay. Instead of tracing, I'm just gonna copy a shape from this part. Okay, so let's say you traced the outline with smooth shape, smooth curve, then you extrude it, or bevel it, or whatever. In this case, extrude is good enough since you won't see the edge anyways. Okay, let's make sure it's smooth. Okay, and you have this basic rough piece. And what you can do is, instead of creating this grid and making this object as a single piece, you can add a basic line on top of it. It might be a bit easier to create. So I'm just roughly tracing the outline. Just to show you the general idea. Alright, like that. And what I want to do is, okay, just let's finish it up here first. Okay, let's say that's our decorative extruded line. So what I want to do is enable it in render and viewport, change it to rectangular, and increase the width and height to something like this. And I want to go ahead and add edit poly straight away. And add turbo smooth as well. Okay. So that's our starting point. And it can be a bit easier to create this than this other version here. But it will not be as high quality as that one. Okay, so let's add a crease here. Let's add a crease there. Actually, let's attach these together. Like this. just deleted these end polygons, as you can see here. And now I can target weld to close the gaps. Okay. And the thing we need to add is this circular part in the center or the end of the scroll, or scroll head as it's called. And to do that, I'm just gonna add some edge loops. And adjust the shape. Alright, so it's roughly something like this. As you can see, it's pretty close. And same thing on this end. Just need to add some geometry and change it into a round shape. Okay. And finally we need to fix this part. And now we can be a bit lazy and just delete these end polys. And leave it like that. Okay, so right now this trim is circular or round in cross section, and we want to change it to rectangular or square, and we can do that by chamfering these long edges. Just select some of these long edges and loop the selection like this. Okay, you need to add some. Right. And looks like there's a problem over here. We have this diagonal edge, which I'm gonna have to remove. Okay. And I'm gonna reselect my long loops. Like that. And finally just chamfer them. And you can control the exact amount of sharpness in these corners. Let's say we want to have them like this. Okay, there's a problem over here, and that's because there is a triangular section, and we can fix it easily by using some basic poly modeling tools. I'm just gonna remove this part and this one and collapse these two edges. and that fixes it. And same on the opposite corner. Just fix the mesh so it's nice and the flow is not interrupted. Okay, like that. And as you can see, the end result is quite similar to this first version, and perhaps this one is easier to create. So choose whichever you want, they both work. And this one is a bit more flexible, more realistic. Right. So sometimes these scrolls have additional details, for example. Okay, this one's a bad example. All right, here you have these details on the inner edges or this flat surface. So we have a flat surface here. I'm going to show you how to add some detail to that. Okay, so we made a copy. I'm going to collapse to editable poly. First I'm going to get rid of these sides, and basically what you do is you select this edge ring, add some loops, maybe pinch it out a bit, and then you can use poly modeling tools to add some detail. For example, I'm going to extrude this part inwards, like this, and I want to select these two loops and chamfer them so they are hard edges. Okay, and I'm going to turn on Turbo Smooth to show you the result, and it has this nice trim. And let's add a bead running along the center. Okay, first I'm gonna extrude this loop just to control the overall shape, and then I'm gonna extrude it again, but this time outwards. Okay, and finally let's chamfer it a bit. Right. And to make sure these two edge loops are crisp and hard, we can use the extrude again and just slightly extrude them inwards. Okay, and now we have a nice bead in the center, and we have given the center part a nice profile. And finally, I'm gonna throw on Cap Holes modifier on top of my Turbo Smooth. If you would use this object, you do not need to delete any faces or use the Cap Holes modifier. You can just edit this part directly, and it's gonna be fine after turbo smoothing. For this one we needed these steps because extruded geometry doesn't have correct mesh on the top and bottom, so we just deleted it and added another cap after modifying the object itself. Otherwise, if you just turbo smooth this thing, you could get something like this, which is not really usable. so it's easier to delete dents, make adjustments, add turbo smooth, and then add the caps back. Right, so that's about it for scrolls.